Okay, so here I am again after 2 years. It's back to doing some regular Zoom meetings. Michael Van Scoik, that's a Dutch name, Van Schaik, aka Mike Singer. That's what most people know me as from my musical pen name. Creator and founder of thebigvirushoax.com, righteousarmy.org, and now blessed and privileged to be a part of a up and coming private organization called TAPS, True American Posterity Sovereigns hyphen PMA. That's private member association or private ministry association. So TAPS, TAPS, stands for True American Posterity Sovereigns, and PMA, Private Membership Association, TAPS hyphen PMA.com or .org. That should forward to .com. I was just having a little conversation here with the 7 or so people, 6 people that are on right now. We have a special guest speaker that's going to come on here in about 15 minutes. So we're going to do a little bit of preliminary talking here on some issues. Let me just say, anybody that starts watching this video, because I'm going to be putting this on all over the internet, on YouTube and BitChute and Brighteon and Rumble and YouTube and other places, that if you go to the website TAPS hyphen, that's the middle line, not the lower line, TAPS hyphen PMA.com, everything that is written on that homepage is succinct and articulate and right to the point and truthful and honest, and it cannot be argued. It's not opinion, it's fact, and it states everything exactly as is, what the truth is. Over the last several years, many people have been surfacing, being concerned about their rights because of the pandemic, because of people being forced to wear a face diaper or being told they have to get vaccinated. So people's rights were being violated. As a result, over the last few years, a lot of movements have emerged. Anna Von Reich's movement, David Lester Straight, America's Assemblies, people getting together and talking about how, they have the right to drive, that they're under the birth certificate and it's all fraud. And there's a lot of narratives that have been taking place where there's kind of this general consensus now in that community of what's happening is simply comes down to the fact that there's a government that's a corporation that's acting in fraud, and that we all have, rights that they're denying us. But there's a much, much deeper and much more profound reality to that we're going to discuss tonight, which is relative to the founding of the United States of America, the constitutional republic, and the people who founded it and what they said when they founded it, who they founded it for, which leads into what some initially might think is controversial over this notion of the founding fathers who created this nation for themselves and their posterity having all rights and privileges and immunities equal to kings, equal to sovereigns. They were given sovereigns total immunity. And they did that for themselves and for their family, their bloodline, their posterity. Just like any one of us or anybody watching this video, if you went and had, a lot of money and bought 10,000 acres of property and put a fence around it and built a bunch of homes and put it in a trust and said, this is for my family, it's for my kinfolk, my bloodline, my posterity. Nobody else has the right to go into your property, it's yours. Well, there are millions of people in this country who are literally the owners of this land. There's millions of people that have come into this nation that a lot of Americans in general are upset about, illegal immigrants, people that are just coming across the border, anchor babies. None of those people have the same rights and privileges and immunities as the founding fathers and their bloodline by law. And it just stands to reason, because again, if anybody had a bunch of property and built homes and did it for themselves and their family, who has the right to now start trampling on their property and saying, hey, this is my land, I'm going to put a well here and I can do what I want too. So there's some intricacies involved with this that have to do with the federal overlay, the federal jurisdiction that was created by the founding fathers, who literally put that government in place to protect themselves and to govern the fact that they knew there would be an influx of immigrants coming in that were not founding fathers and that were not going to be posterity, and they needed to be governed and ruled and regulated. And the Supreme Court early on had to wrestle with that reality. Well, wait a minute, the founding fathers and the people that created this nation were sovereigns. They were given sovereignty. They won the war and they passed that on to their posterity. But now we've got these other people trying to claim they want rights and privileges. What do we do here? Because we can't give them the same. They can't have the same as the founding fathers and their posterity who gave their lives and their land and their blood and everything they had to create a nation. So we started having a lot of governmental changes taking place to try to accommodate the arguments and complaints and civil rights and civil unrest that was emerging for people trying to claim their rights, the women's rights movements and the blacks' rights and these different movements. So it's got convoluted over the years, and it's partly got convoluted as well because of the other aspect of it being that our government has been infiltrated and hijacked literally by communists who intend to take over the government and destroy the nation from within. That's what they said they were going to do. They're doing it via the social trends, Hollywood, the perverted, godless movies and television and programming. They've even said the human mind can be hacked and programmed. And sadly, millions of Americans have fallen victim to that. They live their lives asleep. They're often referred to as sheeple or being asleep. They live godless lives, immoral lives. They are living ungodly, unholy, unrighteous lives and are indulging in all kinds of things that are godless and immoral, self-destructive social trends, self-destructive behaviors, godlessness, breaking down of all that God created, destroying what God made and trying to change things, destroying humanity, destroying racial identity and integrity, destroying gender identity and integrity, destroying sovereign
and
nations.
just so we're clear, Mike, you got this gentleman that's coming on tonight. This guy, because we know all this. He's got the answers. He's got the case law that you're going to point out to prove all that what you were saying in the beginning about the founders and the posterity is true. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
He's going to be on here in just a few minutes.
Okay.
But I was just giving a little bit of a background for anybody that might see me for the first time or see this video for the first time. Because as we all know, that most of us that are here on this meeting or that are going to be here are the ones that have been battling through it for the past 4 years and continued on with the battle. A lot of people were battling for a while, but they've gone back to their lives because everything kind of ended. But I'm going to ask Larry, when Larry first started speaking a few minutes ago, he was trying to address it from his understanding, which I told him is the mainstream kind of narrative that everybody has now. So it's really an ideal way to start off. So Larry, just kind of repeat everything you were saying earlier when you were kind of giving your rundown.
Sure, but somebody just said the magic word there, case law. I just wanted to chime in and say that throughout our adventures in legal land, we should remember that case law is not law. It is simply a judge's opinion, and it should not be taken as law because you can't depend on it. If you go into court and you're going to argue a case based on case law, it might do you good, but it might not. There's no guarantee there. So just so you know, case law is not law. Anyways, I was saying initially that
I'm sorry. Let me just interject again, Larry, since you said that. While it can be a fair statement to say case law is not law, there are laws that have been established through a variety of means. A treaty, for instance. A treaty is virtually an eternal law. You know, it's like, here's the agreement and it's a treaty and it's kind of forever. I mean, treaties that exist between nations, exist for mainly because of the establishment of nations to protect and preserve them eternally, you know. So oftentimes people mistake the idea of what you said with case law is not law with the other aspect of you'll have a court that will try to rule on something and maybe establish case law, and they could be wrong or they could be right. And that's why we have a Supreme Court where things eventually, when they're argued or disagreed with and they get argued up to the Supreme Court is supposed to come to conclusions that are consistent with the founding documents of the nation that they represent. the Republic of the United States of America. However, they are navigating two jurisdictions. They're navigating, they swear an oath to the Republic of the United States of America and to the federal government, the commercial federal overlay, the federal territorial plane, which was a government that was created by the founding fathers to govern the bulks of people that were not among them and their posterity. So the Supreme Court will make not laws, but they will rule on law. They will make rulings to uphold law. Sometimes they overturn things for good or for wrong. And this is where ultimately it's going to require articulation, reason, and educated people that know what they're talking about in large numbers to come together to regain and reestablish their identity and their rights. And if it has to be argued in courts, it has to be argued in courts. If it has to be argued with guns, as it was in the American Revolutionary War, then it will be argued with guns, as it was during the American Revolutionary War. So there's a lot of intricacies involved with this topic because of different opinions and philosophies and spiritual ideas and personal views, and it can really be convoluted. And those are all tools that they even use to their advantage, because they're trying to destroy and tear down what the founding fathers created in terms of a nation. And we're going to address that later, but I just needed to clarify that. But go ahead, Larry.
Sure. Yeah, and it's also important to remember that when you go into a courtroom and you're going to try to make a case, you are not going in there as the man that you think you are or the woman you think you are. You are going in there as a fiduciary for the legal construct that is legally described in the law dictionary as an ens legis, or colloquially known as the straw man. Now, this is the only character that the court has any jurisdiction over. But as long as you go in there and volunteer to be its fiduciary, well, then you might as well be one and the same. So I think it's important to be able to delineate the difference and extract yourself from the duties and responsibilities that come with being a fiduciary for that straw man. And particularly alarming, and this is what I was getting at earlier before the recording started, is the fact that when you look into it, you find that your car and your home, your boat, your airplane, all this stuff, the big ticket items that have titles, you'll very often find those titled in, well, almost always, in the straw man's name. You are given right of possession because you are actively representing that which cannot speak for itself. And this is what gives the state the power to seize those items if they don't like what you're doing. So I don't care if you've paid your house off, you don't own it. Not until you have some kind of proof that you do. But you're not going to find that at your local county courthouse or in the Register of Deeds or wherever you go. What you're going to find is that it's in the name of the ens legis, which is a corporation, which is a subdivision of the state which created it, which is a subdivision of the United States, a corporation. It forms one big corporate pyramid, and your little straw man is part of that.
What do we need when we go down there to show that we own it then? What are we looking for to prove that we own our land?
You're going to face an uphill battle, because nobody that you're going to talk to at your local county headquarters is going to know this. The little peons you get to talk to that are making 15, 20 bucks an hour and getting good bennies to sit on their butts all day, they have no idea. You can go in there and start trying to tell them this stuff, and they get that glassy deer in the headlights look on their eyes, and they just can't wait for you to leave. So, how are we going to do this? This is why I'm here tonight. We need to start figuring out how we do this. So far the trail has led me down to, well, at least in terms of property in your house, which is probably the biggest ticket item for all of us, we need to go back to getting the allodial title through a land patent. And I'm not totally up to speed on that process yet. I'm in the middle of looking into it. And then once you have that, I'm also told that you'll have a difficult time selling your property because no banks will loan money on it if it's not state owned. And
All right, so Larry, let me interject again right there, because again, you've said a lot of things that are very consistent with that typical narrative that's out there, which again is not wrong. But I'm going to go ahead and call our guest speaker right now. So hold on a second, and let me get him on the phone here.
I'm going to grab something to drink. My voice is starting to go.
He doesn't have to go on camera, Mike. Can he just click on the link and he doesn't have a computer?
Hey, Grant.
Hey,
Mike. Hey, brother. I'm on Zoom right now. I've got some people on here. Do me a favor, Joseph, and tell Adam to get his butt on here, because Grant is on the phone and he needs to be on here. Call him, do whatever you got to do to get him on here. So Grant, while I got you on the phone, I have just about half a dozen people. There's one man in particular that I wanted to be on here. It doesn't matter because we're recording it and he'll be able to listen to this afterwards, and as well many people. But one of the things we were just kind of preliminarily speaking about before I called you, Grant, was I asked one of the men that are on here right now, Larry, to kind of give his overview of where he's at with everything. And he was talking about the straw man, and this kind of stereotypical narrative, right, that's out there, that's kind of emerged because of the Anna von Rights movement, the David Straits, and the America's Assemblies, and all these patriot movements. They're primarily just talking, about, oh yeah, well, we all have these rights, but yet the government through fraud is treating us all as fictitious characters. And this is true, Larry. That's why I was saying you're not wrong. But in my own words, I would even call that kind of a double reverse psychology psyop, because in some ways it's designed to keep people from knowing the ultimate truth, which is what we're going to discuss right now with Grant, who's joining us from Tennessee. He's spent many years, I'll let him introduce himself, but he's had some visions and dreams early on. He's a very godly man. He's been studying for years Supreme Court rulings. We were talking earlier about how the Supreme Court sometimes has to make rulings based upon laws that already exist. And in a nutshell, I want to just say that this narrative that everybody's accustomed to, there's a big part of the picture that they're all missing. And that's what I'm going to let Grant elaborate on. There's several things I could say, but I'm just going to go ahead and pass it over to Grant now. First, I want to make sure everybody can hear you. Say a few words, Grant.
Okay, can you hear me?
Can you hear him? Larry, can you hear Grant?
I heard something, but I couldn't make out what he said.
I can hear him.
Okay, they can hear you, Grant.
I couldn't hear nothing. You can't hear
I
that.
guess you could look at the straw man as an artificial entity.
Oh, you can hear him?
Now yeah, there we did. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Grant.
It's really just an artificial entity. And there's a Supreme Court case that says that governments are the mere imaginations and abstractions of the minds of men, and they can never attain parity with reality. So with that being said, the president of the United States is an artificial entity. A congressman is an artificial entity. A king is an artificial entity. A U.S. citizen is an artificial entity. They're all artifices because they do not exist under the laws of nature and nature's God. They're just abstractions of the minds of men. So that said, governments are created by men, and so essentially to conduct our affairs for us to have some form of civility. And to understand that straw man, what they did essentially via the birth certificate created you an artificial entity, which for certain people is necessary for them to have legal existence in the United States of America. But not all of us needs that artificial entity to have legal existence in the United States of America. And that would be primarily those of us who are the posterity, because our forefathers are the creators, and they created it for us. So to get back to the straw man, all governments are ran by the law of agency. So to really understand the playing field that you're playing on, you need to understand the law of agency. Now you can get on the internet and look up things. There's books. There's lots of things you can read up about it. But essentially, if you don't understand the law of agency, that's the law that governs the principal-agency relationship. So like if the owner of McDonald's, he would be the principal of McDonald's Corporation. You could get a franchise from him and you'd be his agent. And you would have to agree to conduct your affairs according to his authority. A police officer is an agent of a city or a county or a state. He is supposed to conduct his affairs according to the rules of his principal. So that's why if they act within the rules or laws of their principal, then they generally have indemnity. If they act outside the scope of authority of their principal, then they lose their indemnity. So another name for principal would be sovereign. Another name for sovereign would be master. And another name for master would be owner. They all mean the same thing. If you go down to agency, another name for agency would be subject. A sovereign and a subject. You could have master. You could have servant. You could have owner, and then you would have slave. So those terms are interchangeable. So I've got like 5 to 7 Revolutionary War veterans in my bloodline. So at one time they were the subjects of King George III, and they decided they was tired of being the subjects, so they went to war. And by the grace of God, they won that war, and the war was ended by the Treaty of Paris, 1783. And in Article 1, King George III granted my foremothers, he granted them sovereignty and proprietary ownership to all lands. So they were no longer subjects, but they themselves were, by international law, sovereigns among the sovereign nations of the planet. So they had already created the Continental Congress. But with their newfound sovereignty, they were going to create a more perfect union. And it says they started out with "we, the people." And see, if you read that preamble, there's certain nouns in there that are capitalized. They use capitation. So like the word people, when you put a capital on it, it specifies it. It doesn't mean just every people on the planet. It's a specific group of people. So they created this nation specifically in order to ensure the blessings of liberty for themselves and their posterity. So in today's world, all of we the people are dead, and all that remains is their posterity. And if you are one of them, it means that you can claim the status in law as a principal and not an agent. Now, U.S. citizens are agents. In fact, I've got a Supreme Court case that says that U.S. citizens are the agents and are property of the United States. But see, we are the creators of the United States. But the United States was the creator of U.S. citizens.
And just to interject, when he,
Yeah.
again, to clarify, when he says we created the United States, the only people that can say that are the posterity, because it was their forefathers by blood who created this nation.
So see, that's like a will. They willed this nation to us because they said in there the very purpose of this nation was to ensure the blessings of liberty for themselves and their posterity. So if you are one of the bloodline posterity, it means you're an heir, a legitimate heir, which means if you look it up in law, in a law dictionary, it's called privity of blood. So if you have privity of blood among the other people who have privity of blood, it means you are a coparcenary. You can look that up in the law dictionary, to the estate of your forefathers. And that estate that they left you is called the United States of America, the Republic. And everybody says this is the greatest nation that's ever existed. And if you're one of the people, it belongs to you. So the flaw in the Constitution to understand what has happened is that our forefathers granted plenary powers to Congress in the 10-mile square. Now, see, the people were the owners of the land, and it was a group of people who gave that 10-mile square for the seat of government for our new nation. But in that 10-mile square, Congress is the sovereign. But in the Republic, if they had legal relations with the people in our several states, we were the sovereigns. We were always the sovereign. We were the sovereigns of the United States, and we were the sovereigns of the several states of the Union. But that all got turned upon its head by certain powers that came back in the War of 1812 and the Civil War, tried to flip us back over under British control. But there's in today's world, there's two United States governments, and there's two citizenship statuses, and that's the split. You have to be able to think abstractly when you're reading court cases and everything else to understand. When the Supreme Court's talking about this situation, they're talking about the Republic. When now that what they're talking about the United States, they're talking about the democracy. Here they're talking about we the people as citizens of the several state. In this court ruling, they're talking about U.S. citizens. Two distinct different things.
Yeah, and just make a point, if you will, about the capital C and lower C. You mentioned the capital P earlier.
So when you read the Constitution, when our forefathers wrote it, you see that citizen is with a capital C. And that citizen is the original citizenship that was created by Article 1 of the Treaty of Paris, which is the status that was recognized by the Crown pursuant to that treaty. Now, you can go to the 14th Amendment. It says all persons, not people. And it uses the term lowercase c citizen and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And what that means, they are always subject to the jurisdiction of that 10-mile square. In other words, they're subject to Congress. And they have the right of residency here in the several states of the Union, but they are not the inhabitants. They're not the owners. So there's basically four things that really control your legal relations, and that's another term you need to look up in the law dictionary. And they essentially boil down to this: who are you? Where are you? What are you doing? And who owns who and who owns what? Now, the first one is, who are you? That, if you go look up the law status in a law dictionary, it's your status in law that determines your legal relations. Now, you can have the status of a congressman, a president. You can have the status of the regional citizenship as a state citizen of one of the several states of the Union, or you can have the status of a U.S. citizen. But the status of one is not co-equal to the other. The second one is, where are you? That's jurisdictional. See, in our form of federalism of government, Congress exists in a different plane of jurisdiction than in the several states of the Union. So there's two different jurisdictions.
Well,
And
the Dred Scott versus Sanford.
Hold on. We have somebody wanting to interject with a question.
Well,
Grant.
explain then. Can you explain the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment that overrode the Dred Scott versus Sanford decision of 1857?
Say it again about something about Dred Scott.
Say it again, Joseph.
Yeah, the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment that overrode the Dred Scott versus Sanford decision of 1857, which held that that's where you had the African Americans could not be American citizens, whether enslaved or free, under the new amendment. Citizenship was granted to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. A direct response to it was a direct response to the slavery issue, but it applied to all of us. Once it was adopted, the 14th Amendment became the foundational text for future civil rights advancements in the United States. Equal protection clause, basically. That is the fundamental and various landmark Supreme Court decisions that like, for instance, Brown versus Board of Education, 1954, that governs our citizenship today. So what citizenship are you talking about?
Well, there's state citizens of the Republic. See, we had citizenship before the 14th Amendment ever existed.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Joseph. If you notice what you were reading, it said all persons. Okay, and again, persons are 14th Amendment citizens who are subject to the jurisdiction of that federal territorial plane.
Doesn't mean that those that were already
subject to the jurisdiction in the 14th Amendment. That's
right.
That's okay. That was the debate in American jurisprudence. Okay, so citizenship under the citizenship clause. That's why I'm saying. That's why it was so important. And then you have United States versus Wong Kim Ark, which was decided.
Right, but again, clarify. Yeah.
Well, this is the way I see it. The Dred Scott decision, it wasn't overturned by a Supreme Court ruling. It was simply overturned because what the Dred Scott decision was saying with those people could not be made citizens of the several states. So they had no citizenship. So what they did with the 14th Amendment was to create an alternate citizenship status to give them. And that's exactly what they did. They clothed them with an artificial person to give them legal existence in this nation. But it was only for those to whom it applies. It didn't apply to the people who were already citizens.
Well, hang on, Grant. No, that's not true. But hang on, Grant. That's not true, because it says right there, the interpretation affirmed the principle of just soil right of the soils as a fundamental aspect of American nationality law, right? Contrasting with the right of blood, which many other countries follow to determine citizenship based on one's parents' nationality.
Yeah,
the court's ruling.
This
covers jurisdiction.
Kim Monarch, right?
Yes, and that covers the jurisdiction clause.
I know, but Kim Monarch was not one of the people. He was a Chinaman whose parents were foreign nationals, and he was born here in the United States after the 14th Amendment. After the 14th Amendment, and the issue before the court was his citizenship status. And I agree with them. After the 14th Amendment, if he was born here, even though he may not have no privity of blood, he became clothed with that U.S. citizenship status. And yes, that citizenship status of a U.S. citizen is derived by place of birth.
Yeah.
And again, that's a lowercase, and that's a lowercase c citizen, by the way, not an uppercase.
But the Supreme Court doesn't address lowercase, uppercase citizenship, Mike. No.
Whoa, wait, hold on. Joseph's blurting out that the Supreme Court doesn't make a distinction between lowercase c and uppercase c.
Yeah, give me a case.
Well, okay. Well, then I suggest you go read the Slaughterhouse case, which was the first Supreme Court case that dealt with the 14th Amendment. They clearly made the distinction between the two statuses.
Slaughterhouse case?
Anthony,
What case is that?
The Slaughterhouse case, Joseph,
Yeah.
the Slaughterhouse case.
You can go to as recent as 1935 in Perry versus the United States. The Supreme Court made the clear distinction about the people.
So did Minor versus Happerson.
And Josh just said, so did Minor versus Happerson.
Yeah, but the Equal Protection Clause case, which was in 1954, overruled the Supreme Court decision, including Brown versus Board of Education, addressed all that.
That's right, because see, you don't understand the fundamentals that occur to get to that point. And see, that Brown versus Education was adjudicated after the switch in time cases.
Okay.
There's a whole bunch of history and legal stuff that you don't understand, and you're to me, you're still mixing apples and oranges, and you're either on one side or the other.
Yeah, let's clarify that, because that's a big part of this. The best way for me to explain it, and then Grant can elaborate on it, or maybe my son here, is the courts. I addressed this in the first video that we did that's on the website, right? That, to put it in a nutshell, like Grant said earlier, our forefathers came over here, they battled against the king to establish their own nation. And they indicated they did so for themselves and their posterity. And they did it in such a fashion as it was binding through law, through the Treaty of Paris, that they received their sovereignty and their sovereign nation. And as time was going on, they knew themselves that in the future, floods of people were going to come here that were not going to be their posterity. They knew that. They knew there was going to be all kinds of people flowing in here who had nothing to do with shedding their blood and giving up their lives and their land and their everything to create a nation, that they were passing on to themselves and their posterity. So they knew that was Mike.
You're assuming that. You're assuming that.
I'm not assuming it. I'm not assuming it. Those people were brilliant, and they knew that, and they even discussed it. They addressed the fact that that people were going to be coming into this nation from abroad, well into the future, and that they were not part of the posterity. So the courts had to address the issues. They had to navigate and make rulings based on trying to preserve what was given and granted and won by the founding fathers and passed on to their posterity.
Wrong, Mike. The Constitution is a living document. It meant to govern the United States and its citizens for generations to come.
Hey, Mike,
the preamble itself states that we the people.
Right, but again, it's relative to the status and the jurisdiction that you're in. Because again, a 14th Amendment citizen, somebody can come across the border right now and the U.S. government can give them 14th Amendment citizenship. They don't have the same exact, wait, let's back up. They do have what you're referencing, all the same equal protections to any other 14th Amendment citizen. That's what they have equal protection to. They do not have equal protections to the founding fathers and their posterity.
Hey, Mike.
And let me just hold on before you say anything, Josh. I'll come back to you. let Grant elaborate on that if he wants to.
Okay.
Just give me one second to say something real quick. I want to say this, okay?
Well,
The thing is, typically we get into arguments, and we got this guy Grant here, and we need to stop doing that. We need to stay focused and let him talk. And this is his show. This is your show, Mike. And stop all this sidetracking.
yeah, we're not. Yeah, there's no sidetracking or arguing. Joseph is bringing up some points of concern that he has, that he feels maybe some other people have. So it needs to be addressed, and that's what we're doing.
Exactly.
What he's saying.
It always starts out that way. It ends with a bunch of crap that goes nowhere.
Hold on. Let Grant continue. Go ahead, Grant.
Okay, so if you carefully read the slaughterhouse cases, it was the first case that went to the Supreme Court concerning the 14th Amendment. And they essentially said in that court case that in legal relations between a U.S. citizen and one of the several states of the Union, those U.S. Citizens had no privileges or immunities pursuant to Article 4, Section 2. However, citizens of the several states of the Union have privileges and immunities at Article 4, Section 2. And they even went to so far to rule that U.S. citizens have no privileges and immunities pursuant to the Privileges and Immunity Clause in the 14th Amendment. And they also said that the first 10 amendments to the Constitution did not apply to U.S. citizens in legal relations to the several states.
What gave them that authority, Grant? What gave them that authority? Because now we're saying the Supreme Court has the right to change the Constitution because the principles embedded in the Constitution, such as the checks and balances, federalism, and the protection of individual rights, were meant to serve the nation as a whole.
All I can say is you're not understanding that. You have to understand legal relations. Now, they said, see, in the Republic, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution applied in legal relations to the citizens of the several states in relations to the United States. It had nothing to do with the legal relations of citizens of the several states and their states. That was governed by their constitutions of the state. See, we have the principle of federalism in our government. The federal government and the states are separate. That was the purpose of the 10th Amendment. So U.S. citizens have no privileges or immunities. That was struck down by they have, if you want to be a U.S. citizen, you have due process and equal protection. Now, if you're a state citizen, you have due process pursuant to the 5th Amendment, but the due process clause in the 14th Amendment has nothing to do with you.
So we have no individual rights.
Because you're not that citizen.
No individual rights, you're saying.
What's that?
Say it again, Joseph.
We have no individual rights. That's what he's saying.
Well, I was going to get to it, but see, what happened was where the confusion comes in is that we were in a republic. And you can read all those court cases, Twinnings versus New Jersey, the slaughterhouse cases. It's multiple cases. Downs versus Pinwall. In that court case, they said there is no distinction between the people and their state. Why? Because they're the owners. They're the owners of the place. But U.S. citizens are not. They are merely residents. They were granted the right of residency to live on the people's land, but they're not the owners.
And if I'll interject on there, common sense is a big part of the equation here. Going back again to, if you went out and bought 10,000 acres and put some homes on it for your family and surrounded it by a fence and put it into a trust and said, this is for me and my offspring, but then you allowed some people to come into there and maybe, like an Airbnb and let them rent and let them come in there and let them have a little space. That doesn't mean that they have the same rights as you do on that land.
That's private property, Mike. That's private property. That's a heck of a distinction.
They're not the owners is the point. They're not the owners.
The
You'd be
country
the
owns
owner.
everybody that comes here.
You paying taxes. You're paying your rent. So to put it into perspective, we were in a republic, and they came back several times. The War of 1812, the Civil War. They were trying to destroy the republic and the Union. Well, they finally got their foot in the door with the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. And then the powers that be, the foreign powers that be that wanted to take back over this country, to take it away from the people, they got their man in. They created a problem, which was the Great Depression. And they got the people to agree, and they put Roosevelt in, and he offered them the solution. And in 1935, he gave a speech to Congress where he said, our path to recovery is a narrowly conceived effort to exchange the appearance of reality for reality itself.
Now think about that, Joseph. Why would a president even say such a thing?
I agree with him. He did say that. You're right. But what gave him the right to do that without the people's consent?
I'll tell you what gave him the right. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, where we the people, I've got all them Supreme Court cases I gave Josh. It says right in there, all authority is in the people. You know, they are the sovereigns. They are the owners.
And again, let's clarify that. Grant just said all the authority is in the people.
So the
Most
Supreme
people are
Court
gonna hear
made that
that.
decision.
Hold
So
on.
the Supreme Court can change it.
Hold on. Wait, Joseph. Most people, when they hear that, they're going to think, oh, we the people, everybody that's all walking around here across America, that's just come in from all the lands all around the world. But because they're here, they're Americans, and that means the people, and they're the authority. And that's not the case.
Yeah, U.S. citizens have civil rights, but they have no fundamental or natural rights. So when Roosevelt, what they did, they shut down the republic. It's still there because, see, it's the paramount law. See, without Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, this new appearance of reality cannot exist, because the authority that was granted in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 came from the people in their Constitution.
Oh, I agree with you.
So
Yeah, I
what they
agree with
simply
that.
did
You're
is
absolutely
take
right.
that-
Yeah, they
take that
usurped the republic. Yeah, I agree with you. Yes.
Hey, I got a question. Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So, saying that everything is what you say it is, what good is it going to do us? How are we going to be able to prove it? And if we can prove it, what good is it going to do us?
Good point.
Well, if you figure out what I'm saying, that's what we're getting ready, I think, to show, and I've already proved it to myself.
Yeah, and again, let me just say, my son.
I'm not just talking. If I hadn't seen it work myself, I wouldn't be here telling you anything.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. Grant just said he proved it to himself, and he's done a heck of a lot of studying and reading. My son, mind-blowingly, has blown my mind away in the last 2 years with his burning the midnight oil for 2-3 days at a time without sleeping, with the books open, learning, studying, reading all the different laws and Supreme Court cases. It's amazing what he's done, and he knows it's true. He's convinced. He believes it. He sees it for what it is. I am, as you know, Joseph, I'm the guy that we all have our talents. We all have our gifts. I'm the guy that looks at everything, right? And I see what this person is saying, and that person, and this person, and that person, and that person. And God Almighty tells me in my mind, it's discernment. Wow, that's wrong, and that's wrong, and that's wrong. This is right. That's what I did with the bigvirushoax.com.
So what's our remedy,
So,
Mike? What's our remedy?
Hold on. Let me put out my point here. That's what I did do with the bigvirushoax.com by the grace of God and the guidance of God, to let people know the truth about what a virus is and what a virus isn't, what face masks are and what they're not, what vaccines are and what they're not and what's in them, what's going on between the Department of Defense and pharmaceutical companies for the manufacture of biological weaponry and the depopulation efforts. I can see it all for what it is. And that's why I created Righteous Army. Where's the people that are going to stand up against it? So me, in my limited knowledge at that time and ignorance, not knowing the things that I now know, was all about jumping on the bandwagon with Anna von Reitz and David Straight, because they were talking about 14th Amendment citizens are slaves and the birthright, birth certificate, and we have no rights. But none of it made total sense. And as Grant will probably elaborate on here, none of it has worked. None of it works. People are constantly ending up in jail. They're being laughed at. It's been turned into a mockery, this whole sovereign thing and national citizenry.
So
national
like
thing.
the gentleman
That's
asked,
because,
what's our
and that's
remedy, Mike?
because, and that's because, as Grant will elaborate on now, there's a difference between over there and over here. And this is where, let me make one last point and let Grant elaborate on it. I think it was a huge, profound point Grant made the other night, Joseph, when you were on the phone with us, and we were talking about the Republic for the United States of America and how laughable it really was and is. And they didn't know it, and none of us did at the time, that they were asking governors to step down when those governors have every right to be in the positions they are in that federal territorial plane. Let me let Grant go ahead and speak now and elaborate on that.
Josh came up to here and he was having his issues about the land down there. And then he took some legal actions. Was that not correct?
Correct.
Based upon what I told him?
Correct.
And he filed for a declaratory judgment in federal court. And once he brought up those issues, did not the other parties in the state have a change of heart?
Yeah, in fact, let me elaborate. My son who filed cases in federal court, he knows his stuff, man. Let me tell you, it blew my mind away. My son is brilliant. And he went into federal court for months. That judge was hearing him and then telling the Miami-Dade County attorney for the county, answer to this man, because what he's saying here, answer to him. And the county answered. And then Josh reviewed what they wrote, and it was so pathetic. He blew doors on it and put that back in the judge's face. And the judge said, answer that, county. And it kept going back and forth. Answer that, county. My son had him, man. He had him big time over some land. And then finally, when they got to the very end of it, and the attorneys were trying to say, well, my son just blew doors on him. He read to me everything he did, and it just was masterful. So at the last filing, when they did not file in a timely fashion and tried to assert they didn't have to, my son went ahead at that point and filed his status as a free living man in the Republic for a summary judgment, and put his status and his birth certificate, his authenticated birth certificate. Right, he brought up his birthright to be a state citizen, and the judge, all of a sudden out of the blue, now dismissed the case without prejudice for no jurisdiction.
Jurisdiction.
Wait a minute. He dismissed the case, you said?
Without prejudice, which means it could continue to be heard. But
yeah, if he did it with prejudice, then that was
for lack of jurisdiction, because my son,
all right,
my son made it clear that he was a state citizen.
Okay, but what did he win? If he just dismissed the case, what happened? He just threw it out? What's that mean? What do you mean dismiss? What was the order?
The order was that he had to dismiss the case because he had no jurisdiction.
He said the court had no jurisdiction, or Josh had no jurisdiction?
Right.
The court had no jurisdiction.
Yeah.
That's what it says?
Yes.
Federal court said once he brought up the correct issue, they had no jurisdiction.
Okay, so what's our remedy then? What do we got to file then that Josh filed then? What do we got to do?
So what we're working on right now is to, I think that the only court that can hear you, the only court that's left, and what first thing that clued me in was those Bunsen brothers was talking about their case, and I listened to an interview. They was talking about all the things they did. They had to go to the Supreme Court, and they had to do this, and they had to do that. And he said, and one of the Bunsen brothers said, oh, by the way, did you know that the Supreme Court has 2 oaths of offices? you know why they have two? I highly suspect the reason they have two is because once Roosevelt did what he did, they had to do the switch in time cases. And if you don't understand the switch in time cases, you don't know what you're talking about. So they have
Which I'm sorry, by the way, Grant, just a quick elaboration on that. That's the case that made it clear that you're in a different time and place and
time, space, law exists in time, space, place, and plane.
Well, wait a
So,
second, Mike, hang on. So he did, I just want to be clear. So the judge dismissed the case with prejudice. So that means Josh can't bring no more claims to court.
no, I said without prejudice.
Without prejudice.
No,
That's what I mean. You know what that means, right? That means Josh cannot bring no further claims concerning that issue to that court.
No, when it's without prejudice, that means you can. When it's with prejudice, then you cannot.
They said, okay, so if the case is dismissed without prejudice, it means that the case is dismissed temporarily and the plaintiff is allowed to refile, right?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So, see, what you have to understand is when Roosevelt switched and the Supreme Court did their switch in time cases, he was going to pack the court. The Supreme Court was not going along with Roosevelt. And in order for the central bankers and the crown to get their grubby hands back on the people's land and their money and your status, they had to get you someplace else where the Constitution didn't apply.
Yeah.
And that's how I suggest you go read Downs versus Bidwell. Because in that Supreme Court case, the Supreme Court said that the Constitution applies and it doesn't apply, depending upon the legal relations of the parties.
Now that point right there, let that soak in. The Constitution applies and it doesn't apply, but depending upon the legal relations of the parties.
It does soak in, Mike, but what gives the Supreme Court the right, that does not have the authority to do that? They can't change the Constitution. They can't make the, only about that case they can.
Status, in law, and who has title, who's the owner. So they switched. So Roosevelt was going to pack the court, didn't go along with him. So they had to switch. They had to make a strategic decision to switch. So they had to do the switch in time cases. So essentially what the court said, okay, we will start looking at these legal cases through the lens of the territorial jurisdiction of the United States and not the lens of the Republic. And the first case that was life insurance versus Hayworth. The reason they had to do that one was they flipped into this new territorial jurisdiction. They had to be a way to get to court under the Article 3, which those Article 3 clauses wouldn't always apply to U.S. citizens. So they merely said in that court case that the mere pursuant to the Federal Declaratory Judgment Act, that the mere legal relations of the parties was sufficient to trip the controversies clauses in Article 3. So that had to be done first. And there were several others that came after that, pretty much in 1935, and I think of one in 1937.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Grant, just a quick review here, because this is so significant and a lot of people, it's going to go right over their head. The Supreme Court, right? When like Grant said, when the infiltrators got in here to try to take back this land and take back everything that the people fought and died for and won in the American Revolutionary War, and they came in here to try to take it back subversively through politics and through banking, all right? The Supreme Court did not, and think about that, the Supreme Court at that time, they were probably children or teenagers in the days of the forefathers, or their grandchildren. And they were still in touch with the reality of the Republic. And when they saw that they were trying to create this replacing, reality with the appearance of reality that FDR was trying to put through, they didn't agree with them. And FDR threatened to pack the court. You remember that happened, what was it, under Obama or Biden, where they were trying to get something done and there was a threat of them packing the court. In other words, let's just put in enough Supreme Court justices to get done what we want. That's their little maneuver. And they didn't want the court to get packed. So even to protect the integrity of the courts, they did some slick little maneuvers. And that's what Grant's talking about.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Grant.
So the last switch in time case was Erie Railroad versus Tompkins, and in that court case, they switched long-standing traditions of the Supreme Court that they ruled that the common law applied in the federal territorial jurisdiction. But Erie Railroad, they switched. They said there is no common law in the federal territorial jurisdiction. But they said, however, Congress has no power or authority to take away the common law of the people in the several states.
Now get that. You might want to say that again, Grant, because that's a huge.
Okay, they switched and they said there is no common law in the federal territorial jurisdiction. However, Congress has no power or authority to take away the common law in the several states of the Union, the people's common law
Right.
in the several states of the Union.
Which was the we the people who founded the nation and their posterity.
Yeah. But see, you're not in common law anymore. But see what they did once they got the clearing with those Supreme Court cases, it opened the door for them to fully implement the appearance of reality. And that appearance of reality today can be read in Title I through Title 52 or whatever it is today. All those laws, those are purely territorial laws, and they only apply in the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. However, if you're a U.S. citizen, it don't matter where you're at, you're the property of the United States, and those laws apply to you. However, if you're a state citizen in one of the several states of the Union, then those laws are not applicable to you because they're not in that jurisdiction.
So now
That's what the federal judge recognized when Josh brought up the issue of being a citizen of one of the several states. He has no jurisdiction because, see, they are in a different jurisdiction of a federal territorial plane. They are not in proper office in legal relations to we the people in the several states of the Union.
All right, now let's clarify that again, because this is huge, Grant. People need to understand they still have the right to exist. This is again where people are having a problem.
Yeah, they have the right to exist because we the people gave them the right to exist. We said, Congress, and you have plenary powers to run that 10-mile square and the territories any way you choose.
Now, on that note, let me interject. Do you think that the people gave that federal territorial plane those rights with the understanding that now, yes, go in there and take all of our rights and privileges and immunities away from us? Of course not.
Do you think that the founders who created Congress thought that they would use the powers that was given to them in the 10-mile square to use that to create a government to set aside the republic that they were created to operate and set aside the republic and turn around and create a federal territorial government, which has no application in the republic, and that's all they're operating today.
Which again needs a lot of clarification for people so they get it. There's two planes, there's two jurisdictions, a territorial plane jurisdiction wherein there is no common law and they have control over the 14th Amendment citizenry, and the state citizen, we the people.
If you walk in, so before I go forward, so title 28, that's the judiciary title in the federal territorial jurisdiction of that government. It has nothing to do with the government that we the people created. So, but they had to give, when they did this, in order to keep it constitutional, they had to give you, they had to put remedy in the law, and there's remedy everywhere. Okay, so now your signature remedy is.
Hold on, Grant. I'm sorry for the people that don't get it. I need to put clarity on that, and you can repeat it. They had to put remedy in the law. Why would they have to do that? They had to
to-
put remedy in the law. Go ahead,
to
Greg.
make it, to keep it constitutional.
In order to protect.
Well, it could be ruled unconstitutional. They had to give you remedy. So, in other words, if you go to Title 28, 1740, write this down. Title 28, 1746, 1 in parentheses, as opposed to Title 28, 1746, 2 in parentheses. Now, you can go read it yourself. Number 1 is the republic. Number 2 is the democracy in the federal territorial plane. And then you can go to Title 28, and you can go look it up. You can look up Title 28, 81 through 131. And I think Tennessee is 123. So those are the new federal territorial states created by Congress, which only exist in the federal territorial plane.
So again, this needs to be reiterated for people. Look in those codes, which are the codes to govern that federal government, that artificial government that has nothing to do with the republic and its government. They created their own states. They're not states of the union. They're not union states.
Yeah, those states that Congress created was not created by we the people. Now, the state of Tennessee was created by the people, and they adopted their own constitution, and they joined the union pursuant to Article 4, Section 4. But the state of Tennessee, created by Congress at Title 28, 123, has never joined the union.
And it's a corporation, right, with a Dun and Bradstreet number.
Probably because they all are. But so today, when you walk into a court, you're going to walk in that court and see they got those flags in there because they're letting you know what? The jurisdiction. They're letting you know that you just stepped into a federal territorial jurisdictional court. And see, that United States flag has a yellow fringe around it, and so does the state flag. And see, that state flag is representing that state that was created by Congress and not the people.
Yeah, and again, just to clarify for people that think that means maritime law and all that, the fringe flag, it's
not maritime. It's commerce.
Right.
It's purely commerce. Title 18, premise commercial. It's all commerce today. It's all being operated under UCC, Universal Commercial Code. And there is no common law there.
I'm sorry, Grant. Just a quick interjection. There's the call right there. This is why we're calling out for Americans who know or suspect that they may have direct bloodline lineage to the founding fathers of this nation, who are posterity, true posterity, to wake up, come forward, and join us. Because we're creating an organization. It's going to be on the up and up. We're going to be just like the NRA or the Heritage Foundation. You know how they have the NAACP for the blacks, so let's protect the blacks, and in the ACLU, let's protect, in the anti-Semite thing, protect the Jews, protect the blacks, protect the women. Well, guess what? There are bloodline posterity in this nation who have vested rights that go back to the founding fathers who said we built this for ourselves and our posterity, and they've buried that, and we're calling them to rise. Resurrection. It's the resurrection.
Another country. We're building the republic.
Say that again. By the way, just so you guys know, it's been difficult for me. I spent 4 hours today. I bought a brand new laptop. I was at my house for 4 hours trying to get Zoom to come on, and it wouldn't. They're messing with me. I have no internet. Everything kept being slow. Right now, I'm holding 2 cell phones in my hand in my car with my knees up, trying to hold the phones together near the speaker at the top of the roof of my car for the last hour. And initially,
well, these guys can't log in. They can't log in.
Initially, Zoom was on my Bluetooth in my car, and Grant was just on my phone, and I was holding them together. But somehow or another, it switched where now Grant's coming through Bluetooth on my car, and you guys on my phone on Zoom are only coming through very faint. So when you guys have something to say, I need to put the phone close for you, Grant. So just so you know, that's what's going on at the moment. So
Okay.
they had a question. Go ahead, Joseph, again.
So what are we,
Well,
you mentioned creating, the website. So what are we creating here? That we're going back to the Republic? Are we creating another country? And by the way, switching times means court philosophy. So I think somebody said jurisdiction. It means court philosophy.
If I understood the question, we're not creating another country. Our forefathers done created it. It's just not inhabited today. And that's what I was saying. Those judges and those courts down here today are not judges in the Republic. They're judges in the federal territorial jurisdiction. Therefore, you control the condition precedent to any contract, stipulation, or agreement that normally gets you into those courts by using your signature remedy at Title 28, 1746-1. And if you are a citizen of one of the several states of the Union, they can't see you.
And on that note, let me interject this thought for all the people that were involved with the Republic for the United States of America. I made the point earlier how it's mind-blowing that it's so true that it was laughable that they didn't know any better, but they were trying to tell governors to step down when those governors had every right to be in their positions in that federal territorial plane. But also, it should be noted, it's certainly my position, and I believe it's Grant's, and he can elaborate if he wants, that when we talk about re-inhabiting the Republic, that's another flaw that the Republic for the United States of America has been making over the last several years. They're not pointing out that the only people that can re-inhabit the Republic, and I'm not talking about being in the Republic. When I say re-inhabit, because they're talking about re-inhabiting the seats. The only people that can re-inhabit the seats of that Republic are bloodline posterity
How do we
Americans.
determine that, Mike? How do we determine that?
Go ahead, Grant. Joseph said, how do we determine that?
Because you're the heir. I suggest you go get a Black's Law Dictionary and look up vested rights.
My great grandfather's name isn't in Black's Law Dictionary. I want to know how we determine whose bloodline is entitled to this posterity.
Are you one of the posterity of the people who was go read? I'll go back. Go read the Happenstack case. They laid it out very clearly. The Supreme Court in that case.
Yep.
So once again, read the
That's the question. I
Happenstack.
don't want to go back and read something. I want to know what.
Read the Happenstack case because they laid it out very clearly. So my son said it's the best one he's found. So on that question you asked, it's in the Happenstack case. They address it very clearly. So for anybody that hears this video, they can look up the Happenstack case.
Why not just tell us?
hey, Mike, it's Tave.
Go ahead, Tave.
I did my ancestry and got it all brought back, and I chased it all down. Of course, you know, I'm like you, I'm going through the motions with this. I have Cherokee Indian percentage, and I've been looking through this, and I'm reading something here with going back through the Ohio Land Company, the Virginia Company, and it says land reclamation rights for some tribes have been fought and regained through ancestral lands based on treaties meant to protect their posterity. With that being said, when I brought up last week, you know, I don't have any direct lineage to any one of the founding forefathers. Is this obtainable like you guys are doing to try and help you because I'm one of the indigenous that were here that were dealt with like this?
Yeah, I've got Cherokee in my bloodline.
Okay.
Very distant, but see that you could make a claim on that treaty, just like that guy that was in Oklahoma. He said the state of Oklahoma arrested him for doing something. He said, you don't have any jurisdiction to do that. And it went to the Supreme Court, and Justice Gorsuch agreed with the liberal side of the court, and I agreed with the court. They had no jurisdiction over him. Now he has jurisdiction. The federal government has jurisdiction over him because of the treaty.
Right.
Now but I don't think you're fully grasping what I'm telling you. Okay. The government that's in place now, that's in place and operating today, is a federal territorial government. Now, when that treaty was made that you're talking about, did that federal territorial government even exist? No, it didn't.
No.
That treaty was made with the Republic of the United States of America.
Okay.
So it comes, the question is, does the United States have any legitimate, it's sort of in effect, it could be say it abandoned that treaty when it abandoned its status. You know, that's not a, you know, that's an argument you could take before the Supreme Court.
Which, by the
Yeah.
way,
You could file for declaratory judgment. If you have a bloodline posterity and you can claim, just like I'm claiming the treaty, to have, onto the Treaty of Paris, because my forefathers was granted sovereignty by that treaty. The same thing with you. If you have a bloodline, then maybe you can claim, against that treaty because you're one of those people that the treaty was made to.
Can I ask,
That-
The bloodline posterity.
yeah.
I
can
knew
I
I
ask a
couldn't
question?
correct
Hold
lineage.
on, hold on. My son want to say something.
Part of this, and it's huge, is learning how to become an attorney, basically becoming sui juris. And you're going to be going into court a lot when you decide that, hey, I'm going to stand up for myself and, you know, take care of my affairs and my responsibility. You're going to be going into court a lot. So because of that, with that being said, you need to basically become an attorney in and of yourself.
And having
no
said,
no attorney, there is no attorneys operating in the Republic. So
Now-
none of them are going to do it for you.
right, and my son having said that, there's truth to that. We all need to become educated. We all know the chapter and verse, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So we need to be knowledgeable, and we can help each other do that. That's part of what the organization is that we're putting together, is even to be there for one another, to share knowledge on this particular issue, because this particular issue is paramount. It supersedes anything that's been done by Anna von Reitz or David Straight or America's Assemblies or the Republic for the United States of America, because you were talking about the actual law foundational principles of this nation and how it was changed by this artificial construct. Go ahead, Grant.
So what I'm saying is, if you're one of the posterity of the people for whom this nation was created, the United States of America, because without me, it doesn't exist.
And let me elaborate on that. When Grant says that, that is privity of blood. That is what they meant by posterity. They created this nation and they said, my child and my child's child and my child's child's child are me. They're my blood. So we're the same. So we have the same rights that they had because we are their bloodline posterity.
Hey, Mike.
The Supreme Court has ruled, even though there is no common law in the federal territorial jurisdiction. However, the Supreme Court has ruled that the Constitution has to be read in light of the common law, because that's the only law existed when they wrote that. So the right of the heir is clearly laid out in common law. That's why Charles is sitting on the throne over there. See, he was the heir, and he's the owner. That's his government. He owns the United Kingdom. He owns Canada. He owns Australia. He owns New Zealand. He owns all those Commonwealth nations.
And that's my
Every one of those people that goes into those governments, those parliamentary governments, they take an oath to him.
And on that note, let me say, if you think you're going to take the Treaty of Paris away from the heirs of the Republic, then we can say, you know what, King Charles, then your treaty isn't valid either. And we could say that to numerous other treaties. Your treaty isn't valid either. The point is that, go ahead, Grant.
What we could say, you couldn't say that he's not valid as a sovereign. But what you could say is, hey, if you don't recognize me in the Republic, which is the foundational law of this nation, then if I don't exist, because see, there's a maximum of law that if the principle be taken away, the agent is also taken away. The agent cannot exist without the principle. Now, we the people were the principle, and Congress was our agent. Congress did a little switcheroo. They shut down our republic and they created their own little government over here. And over there, they're the sovereigns.
And which, by the way, like, again, let me interject, that little government over there happens to be owned by the Crown of England. It's a corporation that's owned by the Crown of England.
Well, it's really owned by Congress.
Well,
Now they created a corporation for the operation of their government. That corporation was created by the Act of 1871, which they had every right to do. And a lot of people say, "Oh, the republic. There's not been a republic since 18." No, that's not true. They just simply created a corporation to operate their government over
Yeah,
there.
by the active military force.
No, that was the
Civil
Civil War.
War. Yeah, they came in with,
They-
they unseated the governors
the,
by
the
the
republic.
length of a rifle.
The republic was in existence and is still in existence. It has to be in existence, or there is no foundational principle upon which the United States in its current political and legal state could exist.
Because it's the principle.
And see, and if you take us away as the principal, if we don't exist, then you don't exist, because see, in the republic you're our agent, and there. So you strip the foundation of the very foundation upon your legal and political existence depends upon us. And without that, you don't exist. Not in law. Now they could continue to exist because they're in the appearance of reality.
and let me say this. I like the way my son says it. We could literally go over to King Charles in England and say, my direct forefather had a treaty with your direct forefather. Are you going to honor it?
It's all about honor. Yep.
Yeah. And see, that's what, and then once you do the right paperwork and you let them know that you know, and you send it to them properly, and you get everything taken care of, like we talked about, then one of the first things I would do with my paperwork, I would send it to the British Embassy with a letterhead telling them that His Majesty has a duty, an obligation to honor the Treaty of Paris.
Am I sending, Grant? I mean, you guys keep saying that paperwork. What paperwork? What are we
We're
saying?
working on it.
Oh,
That's
working
another
on it.
reason.
Oh, here we go.
That's another reason why we're putting out a call for the American people who are posterities to stand up, to join us, to support. Let me say on the support issue, okay, Grant, again, has his gifts. My son has his, I have mine. I spent the last 3 weeks, I paid $300 out of my pocket to get an EIN so that we can be a legitimate, private, non-for-profit organization. I spent $60 out of my pocket to get a Zoom, paid for mailing so I could send out multiple emails. I paid out of my pocket $600 today just to get a laptop so I could do Zoom calls. My point is, there's only one other person who's put a penny into this organization, and that's Tave, who's on the phone with us. He's the first and only guy that has signed up at $100 to be a member of this organization. And now he's even indicating he might not even be posterity, but he wants to support us, and he's going to look for an angle to get his own sovereignty through his native inhabitants, which I would concur with, because even my son and I, our bloodline doesn't go back to just the forefathers. We go back to the 1600s. That's when our patriarchal that's when our patriarchal grandfather came over here and put his foot on the soil, and our blood has been here since then. So we're just as much of a native as the Indians are. We were here before this nation existed, before the Pilgrims. When the Pilgrims came, they were living in peace and harmony with the Indians. All right, we know there's troublemakers that came over to try to disrupt the republic and everything else. That's a whole nother aspect of this conversation. But the gist of this conversation is that the founding fathers built the nation for themselves and their posterity.
We know
that's their word. Hold on. That's their words. And that's what's in law. And so we're reaching out, we're calling out to Americans who may be, and even Americans that aren't, they should be supporting our effort, because we're the only people that are trying to take a righteous step forward. Read the website, read the quotes I put on there from John Adams and from George Washington and from Thomas Jefferson about morality and virtue being part of a nation. We know they've destroyed the United States of America as it is. They've turned it into a godless pit of iniquity. They've destroyed people through stupidity and perversion and poison and everything else. They've destroyed this nation from within and without. So we are the people who are the lawful heirs of this country, and we want to put a call out to all of them to join us, and let's move forward together with consistency to reestablish and regain our rights, privileges, and immunities. And we are actually the only people who could, in accordance with the Declaration of Independence, abolish
the government. And it's
My-
not necessarily that we want to abolish it.
Our
I'm
rights
gonna
are
let, in
given
fact,
by
I
our
want to let,
creator,
I want to
Mike.
let Grant, I want to let Grant elaborate on that, because to some degree, I'll say it how you told me, Grant, the other day. We're not looking to change their appearance. We just want, go ahead.
I mean, I don't know, but see, if you go to Article 4, Section 3, it says that nothing in this Constitution shall be so used as to prejudice any of the claims of the United States. And then it goes on and says, nor of any state. Now, in today's world, the United States is a federal territorial government. Now, if you go back to the Republic, see those states that were referred to under the 10th Amendment were the states of the people. And in Downs versus Penwall, the Supreme Court said there is no distinction between the people and their states, because you see, they're the owners. And if I'm an owner here in the state of Tennessee, do I need a license? If I'm the owner of these roads out here, do I need a license to travel on my own property?
No.
I don't think so, because the license is permission to do that, which is illegal. Is it illegal for me to travel on my own land, my own country?
No.
No.
Oh,
Is it illegal for me to marry?
Times, we've been through this a million times. That's what I'm saying. People have been battling this year after year, and and it's the same thing. We're putting together the paperwork. It's the same thing.
Well, again, the reason for that, Joseph, is because they've been going about it the wrong way. They're essentially they're putting out the call like any Tom, Dick, or Harry can go into a court and act like they're a sovereign. The courts are going to laugh at them because they are. Go ahead, Grant.
That's what it isn't about saying anything about this until we do it. Now, I already know that the signature remedy works because I used it.
Yeah, go ahead and give that story, Grant. That's excellent.
Well, my mother had Alzheimer's, and this municipal corporation had put a sewer line across our property without having ownership of it. Well, they didn't really know about it because the guy that put it in there that worked for the city hadn't told them, but they subsequently found out about it. Well, once they did, they went into shock and they initiated eminent domain. If you carefully read those several Supreme Court cases, they said that U.S. citizens in legal relations to the eminent domain clause, there's no legal relations for us between a U.S. citizen and a state for that to apply. There was no eminent domain unless it was in their state constitution. However, we're in this new political state of affairs right now. So I had to get an attorney, and they hired one of the big fancy law firms to come against me, and we went back and forth, and I was talking to my attorney about a lot of this stuff, and I guess they thought I was crazy. But anyway, it came down to finally the judge ordered us to go and have a mediation. So I went to mediation. So me and my attorney sat in our little room. There was a mediation attorney, and the city and their attorney was in another room. So I had to do virtually all the argument. My attorney just sat there because they had done set it up. They already knew what they were going to do before I went. It was just a formality to get me to have the appearance of a mediation. But anyway, I got them to agree to pay $14,000 for that property, which was really stealing it. So the mediation attorney wrote up the contract. So he handed me the contract. And he said, "Is that okay with you?" And I looked at it and I said, "Yeah, that's fine with me."
Did I lose everybody? Hold on, Grant. Okay. Hold on, Grant. I don't know if I lost everybody.
No, I'm still here.
I'm still here.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Grant.
Okay. So I said, "Yeah, it's okay with me if it's okay with him." And I handed it to my attorney. He looked at it and he signed it. There was a place for him to sign. Because see, they wanted witnesses to the contract to make it valid. So he handed it to me. And I said, "Well, I'm going to sign it, but I'm going to control my signature." So I signed my name, and I merely put 28 USC 1746-1 beside my name. My attorney picked it up. He looked at it and had this quizzical look on his face and handed it to the mediation attorney. He signed it, and he went over to the other side And I thought, well, they may not sign it, but they signed it. But when they signed it, they created an estoppel. So that's what's happening to you every day. You're giving them an unrestricted signature and you're creating an estoppel in legal relations to that
Yes.
federal territorial government.
Yes, because according to the founders, eminent domain is constitutional. The Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution includes the takings clause, which states, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So you were compensated for your private property. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they were competent because see, in this new appearance of reality, once they did the switch, and in the 1950s, if the Supreme Court had started ruling, because they got everybody to make the appearance by the acceptance of the Social Security, that they accepted a U.S. citizenship status and they waived their rights as a state citizen. So the Supreme Court had to do another strategic move, and that move was done in the 1950s because if the Supreme Court started ruling that there were certain states which didn't have a Second Amendment in their Constitution, if they started saying, oh, yeah, you're a state citizen of Illinois, so the state of Illinois, if you're a U.S. citizen in that state, they can take your guns. So what the Supreme Court did, they did a switch where they said, they used the due process clause in the 14th Amendment to say that, oh yeah, pursuant to the due process clause, now these other amendments in the Constitution do apply to U.S. citizens in relations to the states. And see, they made certain rulings that says that they gave you the right to keep and bear arms is protected now by U.S. citizens and legal relations to the states, and several other of those amendments, but not all of them. So we're in this new appearance of reality. So one of the things that they said applies to U.S. citizens and legal relations to the states is that is the takings clause. They have to pay you if they take your property.
Yeah.
So anyway, they was going to pay me for taking that property. So I signed it that way. They took it over to the city and their attorney, and I thought, well, they may not sign it, but they brought it back and they signed it.
Mhm.
And I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But anyway, probably what happened, that attorney took it over to the judge and he laid it down on the judge's desk and he's seen where I'd signed it that way, and they made an agreement to conduct that contract in the United States of America, the Republic. And the laws of the Republic applies to the contract, which mean they had to pay me with lawful money in the Republic, which is gold and silver. Now, over here in the Federal Territorial Plain, they can discharge your debts with in-specific notes which have no assured value, which is Federal Reserve notes. So, you know what hit the fan? They had to try to figure out a way to pull me back over.
Which, by the way, point out how much money that was. He figured out how much they would have had to pay you.
They were supposed to pay me 14,000 1-ounce United States silver coins, which I think I calculated that the cost per ounce of silver that came out to like $320,000.
So just again, for clarification here, for people that might be missing it, because he used his remedy and signed his name with 28 USC 1746-1, he had them either unknowingly, unwittingly, or whatever. They agreed with him and signed a contract where they had to do business with him in accordance with the laws of the United States of America, which
under the common law.
If they
Right,
did it
under
to my
common-
property, Mike, it'd be the same thing. It's the takings clause. They have to pay me for use of my property. It's the law. It's not how he signed the paperwork. What difference does that make?
He
They
got,
didn't pay him in gold and silver.
yeah, that's the difference. How he signed it and how you would sign it, you would get it in those useless federal notes that we talk about.
Well, he got paid gold and silver. No, he got a check for $14,000. That's what he said. He didn't get gold and silver.
Oh, I was under the assumption he got it the other way because of signing it that way. That's why they were
How
upset.
do you be paid? How do you get paid, Mike? I don't know. I guess we lost him. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, if they can hear us, last week, Joe, Sarge brought up. and
Can
Mike
you
knows-
hear me? I must have accidentally hit mute, and I hope I didn't do
Oh,
that.
jeez.
Okay. Well, I only hit it for a second, I think. There, hopefully. But go ahead. Let him finish. Go ahead, Grant.
Okay, so they had to do something to try to get me to come back over into their jurisdiction. So I got a call from my attorney and his secretary. She said, "We've got a check down here for you." And she said, "Huh, I've got for $14,000." And she said, "Huh, I've never seen one like this before." So I said, "Okay, I'll be down there." So I went down there and I picked up the check, and it was a check written by the court, not the city. And there was a place for me to sign on the back, and there's a place for my attorney to sign, and they had Esquire out by his name. Now, do you know why they did that? See, that Esquire only exists in the federal territorial plane, and that money they were offering me only exists in the federal territorial plane. If I had recognized his status and the money, I would have agreed to come back into their jurisdiction, and the judge would have jurisdiction over the case again. I said, "Okay, I see what you're trying to do." So I used my UCC remedy at 1-105, and I simply signed my name on the check and put "without prejudice," which meant that I'm saying, "I'll accept your $14,000 in Federal Reserve notes. However, I'm reserving all my rights to the previous contract. Thank you very much." So I took the check and got deposited in my mom's bank account, and I never heard from them, and they never got the land. In fact, they won't even come on that land though.
Well, what happened to the sewer pipe? They scrapped the plan, or they scrapped the plan? They didn't put the sewer pipe down then, right?
They had to put in a totally new sewer line on the right of way to go around the property.
Simple knowledge of that law and how to work within that. That's amazing. That's the best one I've heard yet. Mike, we talked last week for a second when Sarge was on, and he made the statement very, very clearly that he was a direct descendant of William Penn in Pennsylvania. He is direct lineage to exactly the posterity we're talking about.
Sarge. Right. Yeah. Well, if that's true, then he is. Yeah.
Well, welcome home.
But you're not understanding what's going on here. Sarge is black. That's why yes, that's a great, he doesn't understand that.
You got to know who you are, and you got to know where you are.
Yeah.
You got to know what you're doing, your capacity. See,
Yeah, Grant, I don't know if you heard that part of what Tave said, because I'm not on speaker with my phone. He said Sarge is black. So, like, what's significance?
well, he's still a posterity.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
If he can prove, well, I guess it would be, can he prove that he's a legitimate heir?
He was a former,
In common law, it has to be legitimate.
he's a former policeman, and I'm sure he's in the military, so he'll know what he's talking about. Yeah.
He's posterity,
Right.
just like they had a group about 2 years ago all meet in the White House that were all descendants of the signatories of the Constitution. You could look it up on Google.
Hey,
They had all
this is Clinton.
grandkids. They had all these grandkids from
Hold on.
Livingston, Jefferson, and one of Thomas Jefferson's posterity was a black guy in there. So he's still posterity.
Yeah. I mean, people have
Well,
mixed,
let me interject this. So now,
Uh-huh.
again, the Constitution has to be viewed under the common law.
Right.
Now, under the common law, see, there is legitimate and there's illegitimate. Are you a legitimate heir? And you can still be an heir, but you're an illegitimate heir.
Let me ask you a question. I'm a member of Sons of the Revolution, which means that every member in there had a family member that fought in the revolution.
That's right. Just like I got 5 or 7 in my bloodline.
So is that proof enough that They ran my
I'd
DNA.
say, yeah, because go read the Happenstack case. They basically, the Happenstack case said, see, the only citizenship that existed when this nation was formed was the citizenship that was recognized in the Article 1 of the Treaty of Paris. And the Happenstack case says that if your family was here at the creation of this nation, there is no doubt of your citizenship.
There you
Thank
go.
you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Read that case, man. That's the best one I've found.
Yeah, read the case.
If your family was here during the time of the revolution, there is no doubt as to your citizenship.
Can you re-mention that
And
case
again,
again?
I would say
Down?
that the only citizenship that existed when this nation was founded, because the precondition for the existence and creation of this nation was the Treaty of Paris, which,
Okay,
by the way,
great.
according
Yeah,
to
that's good.
Article 6, is the supreme law of the land.
Okay, but meanwhile, Mike's driving around with a driver's license. He's been living like a slave. So how do we change this? I mean, it's all good with pat each other on the back. I'm posterity. Yeah. Well, how do we change this slavery stuff?
We're figuring that out now.
We think we figured it out. I personally don't want to say anything about it until we
Right.
do it.
Oh,
Right, I agree. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we'll gladly share with everyone who wants to know.
Right, that's the point. Look,
Top secret then. Okay.
yeah, you can call it top secret, but
Okay.
obviously it's not because Joseph, I
I'll
made
give
it
you my
clear.
money, top secret.
Yeah, I made it clear. Grant, like, and he's already said it a couple times in this discussion that he wanted to keep things on the low, but at the same time,
I did too.
so did my son. But at the same time, Grant did say that we need an organization. We need an organization to protect the posterity. We need an organization.
That's what the government's doing, Mike. They do the same thing. They take our money and everything top secret. Come on.
Excuse me, what are you talking about, Joe?
I mean, what are you talking about? Either we're going to be transparent here and we're going to have a remedy and put it out there for everybody to use so we can enjoy the posterity, or you're going to have a private club here, and that's what the government's doing. No,
the private membership association is for people that are posterity and can prove their bloodline posterity, but it's also open. Obviously, we have public conversations like this one.
You, and it might be myself, going forward to the Supreme Court on your behalf. We're still working out, we're still tweaking things, Joseph, but that's where we're trying to lead. That's the purpose of an organization, because if you're legitimate, we're here to help you.
Hey, this is Clinton. I gotta go, but I will send.
Hold on, Grant.
I gotta go, but I will send my membership money this week to y'all. I gotta go.
Thanks, Clint. All right, Clint. God bless you, brother.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we'll talk to
y'all.
Yeah, every Tuesday now we'll be back to the meetings, Clint. So whenever you want to join in.
I'll be here every Tuesday. All right. Thank you, man.
All right, brother. God bless you. Bye-bye. Go ahead, Grant.
I started to say, we're talking about I already know a person who successfully did it. He was one of the posterity, the people. He proved it, and he filed the right paperwork, and they recognized him.
You know something, Grant? You know what, Grant? I'll check this out, right? I heard this. I'm not saying you. I'm not saying Josh. I'm not saying anybody else. But I'm just to let you know. I've heard this a dozen times. Same thing. I remember being in seminars, 300-400. Let me finish. 300-400 people. President Turner, he's at the UN. We got the traveling papers, the diplomatic papers. We're free. Join the Republic. And look what happened. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. I've been 30 years.
Did you say he went to the UN?
He was at the UN. He went to the Hague, and they filed paperwork with the Hague.
Who
the hell is the UN? I don't
recognize. Let me stop you right there.
Hold on. Go ahead, Grant.
Stop being so negative. The negative, the outburst, or just the actual persistence of negativity on everything is going to end up with a negative result. Can we not try to be positive? Because you know what? Nobody wants to pay any amount of money to do anything that's just going to be some club. But you know what? The work that's being put in to try and figure it out, to even be brought forward to us, to enable them to do what they're doing, I'm going to send them another 100. If you don't want to send it, but don't
send them money for me.
Yeah, and by the way, on that note, thank you and God bless you, Tave, always. But on that note, our efforts here are not just articulating the things that we're discussing right now on paper, which my son's going to be doing with Grant. It's going to be articulated in a very, very smooth, transitional, articulate way on paper so that we can present it to the Supreme Court. It'll have all the documents to back the position that we take and why we take it, and it'll be backed by Supreme Court law and everything else that backs it. But we're doing this for every American because ultimately the corruption and the abuses that are taking place by the current government against even 14th Amendment citizens is unacceptable.
Okay.
So if it takes the posterity to be the ones who have the greatest lawful shot at trying to do something, then those are the ones that need to be standing up and organizing.
Hey, Mike?
Yeah, just to
Make a
prove my
comment about
position
the
on,
award after Grant's finished. Go ahead, Grant.
just to prove my position about the two citizenship classes, it's even in the 14th Amendment itself. If you go read it, if you go read the second section of the 14th Amendment, it talks about the male inhabitants 21 years or older and U.S. citizens.
And
Because women hadn't been granted citizenship at that time. And see, they made a clear distinction between the two classes of people, even in the 14th Amendment.
yeah, elaborate on that again. Repeat it again. Maybe people need to understand that.
It's talking about the vote. If any state or anybody takes away the voting rights, and they name two classes of people in relation to taking away the voting rights. The first one was the male inhabitants, 21 years of age or older. And then it says, and U.S. citizens, that newly created citizenship status by the first section of the 14th Amendment.
And there you go, another distinction. And these distinctions are all over the place. Again, Grant mentioned earlier 28 USC 1746-1. He didn't even mention 2, but that's what he was going to compare it to. If you look at the two of them, 1746-1 is clearly showing that there's a 1746-1 and 2 clearly show that there's a distinction between somebody who's in the U.S. federal territorial plane versus somebody who's in that plane, but they're making an oath based upon the laws of the United States of America, which is the Republic. There's a distinction.
See, that right there is showing the distinction between the jurisdictions.
Right, right.
28 USC 1746-1 as opposed to 2 is showing the jurisdictional distinctions.
Right.
But it's not showing the status distinctions.
Right.
And like I said, legal relations are established by essentially 4 elements of law. Your status, look it up in the law dictionary, the jurisdiction, what you're doing, which is your capacity, and the capacity is derived from the status, and who has title, who has the ownership. And what I'm saying is, it's been a long time since one of the people who are the owners of the several states of the Union and the Republic has walked in to the Supreme Court and demanded that that contract that their forefathers made with the government they created be enforced.
Exactly. And a final note I'll make on that is what we're willing to do as an organization is not only go before the Supreme Court, which is the only lawful court anyway that we should be going before, but if they were counter or didn't do the right thing, we'll take them to the world courts if we have to, because there's treaties at play here and there's bloodline vested rights at play here that's equivalent to that which the king himself, King George over there has. And again, that's why I love the way my son puts it. We could go over there and say, hey, my blood grandfather had a agreement with your blood grandfather, sovereign. You're sovereign, they were sovereign, I'm sovereign. Are you going to honor it?
Yeah, that's what the Republic did. Hey, Grant, was that Dennis Hazley?
Hold on, guys.
Dennis we were talking about?
Hold on. Let Grant finish his thought. Say it again, Grant.
If you go read Article 1 of the Treaty of Paris, it explicitly says in there that King George III says that his heirs and successors are duty bound to honor that treaty.
Exactly.
Grant, was that Dennis
Yeah.
Hazley that you were talking about? You mentioned him to me, the Dennis. Remember we were talking about Dennis? Is that Dennis Hazley?
Yeah, the court
I
recognized
know
that.
Dennis.
The
Okay,
court-
I know who that is then.
Wait, no. Grant didn't understand you. Grant, the Dennis fellow that was in jail, he, what Joseph is asking
Dennis
is,
Hazley.
what's his name? Dennis Hazley.
Yeah.
No,
No,
that's not
Joseph,
him?
it was not him.
Okay.
Okay, Joseph?
All right.
I know
thank
you had your ha
I only
ha.
asked
I
you
know
about
who he is,
15
but no, it
times,
wasn't
Mike.
him. Right. But again, you keep coming up with these, want to get you phrases,
I know, Mike. I know.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. We're gonna get into all this crap. We're
There's
not
a
gonna
lot
get
of stuff
anything
that's not
done.
true.
It's annoying.
I appreciate Joseph because he's very much like me in that he questions all things. And he's
Yeah, but
understandably,
5
hold
years
on,
later,
hold
it's
on,
I
still
hold
want
on,
the
annoying.
hold
remedy.
on.
If that's
He's
annoying to you, too
understandably,
bad.
he's understandably frustrated with the corrupt system. He's
Because he
been
doesn't
beat
do
up.
shit about
he-
it.
He's been beat up in jail cells. All right. So
Okay,
he's
he ain't doing shit about it. He's just bitching
Well,
I ain't
about
doing shit about it. I ain't doing shit about it. What are you talking about? You don't know what I'm
it. I ain't
doing.
doing it,
You don't know
bitching about
what
it.
I'm doing.
Yeah,
How many times you
yeah.
ran for
We didn't
Congress?
get
hold on,
nothing
guys. All
done.
right, calm
What are
down.
we
Shut
gonna
your
do?
That's
fucking
enough.
snitch ass mouth. What are you talking about? I
Come
was on
on.
the phone
All
with
right,
you and Barry Croft. What are you talking about,
That's
man?
enough.
Shut your
That's
mouth.
enough.
Rat.
Man. Oh, just keep it calm and civil. All right. Joseph for 10 years was doing a radio broadcast for the Republic of the United States of America, who we've already pointed out in this conversation tonight, they've done a couple things that were just completely out of place with reality. And he didn't know that. He thought that they were it. They were going to change the world, the Americas, and make it back to the Republic. And they failed. And Joseph knows they failed. Not only did they fail, but Joseph agreed with me after being with them for 10 years when I said they may very well be, and it appears to me they are controlled opposition. That doesn't mean that James Carpenter in Colorado or Sandy Miriaki, Lieutenant Colonel, are not legitimate, genuine people that are believing it's all true. But who's pulling the strings at the top? Who made it come back? Who's manipulating it? Because right now they're talking about Trump is bringing back the republic. Well, I got news for you. They may try to bring back an artificial republic. They may try to bring back a republic that has nothing to do.
Well,
You're correct, Mike. You're absolutely correct.
let's just say that Josh was successful in his what he's going to try to do. Okay, see, he would change his status, therefore it would change his capacity, which gives him standing to bring certain legal things at issue, which a U.S. citizen would not. Let's say that Trump did try to bring back the republic. Okay, Josh could immediately file a thing in the Supreme Court. No, wait just a minute. There was not one person in the republic, a state citizen, that voted for him, because every person that voted had to sign a registration form stating that they're a U.S. citizen. So there is nobody in the republic who owns the place over here has given him any authority to operate in the republic.
Exactly. And this is where there's a lot of psyops going on. There's a lot of psyops going on, and I've been pointing them out for years now.
Hey, Adam's here, Mike.
All right. Huh?
Adam's here, I think, Mike.
Okay. Well, Adam, if you're here, welcome, brother. You can listen to the tape later. I was really wanting you to be on this broadcast, but fortunately recorded it. And I'm hoping I recorded it well, because I'm holding two phones in my hands up above my head in my car for the last 2 hours to try to get this thing recorded. So I'm just hoping that I didn't hit a button or it's not being recorded or whatever. But we'll do it again, because Grant knows what he's talking about. He's studied it for many years. I'm hoping to God this was all recorded, Grant. If not, we got a good practice with a handful of people, but it should be recorded, and I'll have it uploaded tomorrow. And maybe we should just end it at this point, because Grant could go on and we could go on and on. But the point is, it's clear just from listening to tonight's discussion that Grant knows what he's talking about. My son, who studies his butt off for years, agrees with him. I see things with discernment for what they are, and I agree with him. I know he's right. And we're putting out a call to all Americans to wake up to your birthright, vested rights as posterity to the founding fathers, because there's millions of you out there that exist, and together we're going to rise up, and if we have any sort of controversies, we will be bringing them up to the Supreme Court, and we will re-inhabit the republic the way it's meant to be inhabited properly, not a false republic or a phony republic or some made-up fictitious republic that this false corporate government that President Trump is the president of, that can create their own version of a republic, but the republic. And that's why, again, I pointed out that, Joseph, after being with the Republic for 10 years, agreed with me. Yeah, Mike, I think you're right, man. There's something that isn't right about here. They're all about top down. They're all about, there was 5 or 6 red flags I pointed out. It's in one of Joe's recorded conferences that he had, and Joseph agreed with me on every point. I'm concerned about them being controlled opposition. And you know what? Who cares? We don't need them. You know what we need? We need true American posterity sovereigns. That's who we need. The true American posterity sovereigns that are all around this country by the millions.
Hey, Mike, I hogged up a lot of the program, but I was just wondering if anybody had any questions. That's what I wanted to say. So,
okay. Anybody have any questions at this point? Well,
Can
all right,
you
go
put
ahead.
can you put in the chat the case about your prosperity, the name of the case and stuff that I can read?
Yeah, we're actually going to have that on the website pretty soon. Again, right now we're articulating things. Grant has provided my son with a ton of
Minor versus Hepperson
of paperwork, Supreme Court cases, and things that we're going to be putting together in a way that makes sense, where it's very comprehensible. And I'll be putting that on the website for people to review. It was, again, a little preliminary, a little premature perhaps for me to put forth the effort to get the word out, but that was my mission, is help build the organization. So I got on the website because I had all the experience doing the Big Virus Hoax and Righteous Army, and I have such familiarity with all these movements out there that I figured, you know what, I know what needs to be done in that regard. I'm going to jump on it. My son's already started on the paperwork. He's working on that, but he's got his hands filled with a bunch of other things he's working on too. We'll be going up to see Grant again soon, sitting down with him and making sure we get everything right so that we can use it on behalf, first and foremost, of true posterity, American posterity sovereigns, because they have that vested birthright, privity of blood relationship. And there's millions of them out there. But that doesn't mean that other Americans aren't entitled to be set free from the clutches of this corrupt government. In fact, it's only the posterity who can properly, lawfully re-inhabit the republic. Having said that, if Grant wants to elaborate that on that, or if anybody wants to ask any more questions, go ahead.
I just want to say to you guys, thanks, Mike, Joe,
Yeah,
Grant.
thank you.
100% appreciate what you're doing. And finally,
I
it seems
agree.
like something with some headway.
Hi, everybody. I've been listening.
Go ahead, Grant.
If you get a chance, go get you a Black's Law Dictionary, and go look up in the A section, artificial person, and read what it says. Then go to the P section and look up artificial person in that section and read what it says, and listen to what it's saying very carefully and put it together.
There's some clues. There's some clues and some breadcrumbs for everybody here and the people that will hear this video. We got many more. We have many more breadcrumbs to come. There's many more good things to come. We'll be posting them on the internet. So just hang tight.
I'm starving, Mike.
What's that?
Hurry up! I'm starving. So is everybody else.
Hey, Mike, I think
know.
there's a female that had a question there. I mean, you
Okay.
ask anybody had questions they're trying to ask.
Okay, go ahead. Next question.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say I was here and I appreciate the conversation and the language that has been used moving forward in this communication. It's very clear that we don't have to look alike to have this conversation. We don't even have to serve the same. The only thing is that we have a one mind consciousness for togetherness and moving forward and in righteousness of doing what's right for our posterity, our future generations, and moving on truth and being the law that we are. And that's all. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
mhm.
Thanks for coming. I know I invited you. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to ask or say? Larry, Josh, Mark.
Yeah, I want to talk to Grant on the side from away from all this crap, and you and Josh and work on some stuff.
Yeah, that day,
just got my
I'm sure that day will come for
While
you,
this
Josh.
rant was going on, I got my posterity going back to 1967 on my side. I just completed it.
All right, yeah, we'll discuss that with you at length. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this is Garb from Connecticut. In everything that you're talking about, with the posterity, is there a plan, or like you wouldn't know because you don't know all the people with the posterity, but are we gonna this new United States, is it gonna hold true to the treaties that were signed in the 1700s just until the 1800s? Are those are those of concern? Are those treaties being spoken on that were signed, and are they going to remain in effect?
That's a good question.
Once you understand what I'm saying, it leads to a whole, I mean, it opens up Pandora's box legally. So the treaties that was enacted and the United States was a party to when it was in the Republic, do they actually apply to this new government and the federal territorial plane? Because this new government didn't exist when those treaties were made.
No, sir. No, sir. I'm talking about I'm talking about for what you are intending to build. Do you plan to hold to those treaties that were built by that republic of which you speak? Not forget about this government, not talking about this government. I'm talking about the one.
Well, see, we're not going to create a new government. It's already there.
So you're going to hold to the treaties, though.
Yeah. And hold on, let me clarify, because what Garb was asking is, and Grant was trying to clarify. Yeah, we're not creating a new America. It already exists. The republic exists. It just needs to be re-inhabited, and it needs to be re-inhabited with the lawful people that can re-inhabit it. Now, what Garb's question is there were treaties, for instance, the treaty, the Moroccan treaty between the Moors and the
Treaty of Friendship.
The Treaty of Friendship, right? Essentially, Garb's asking if let's say we re-inhabit and reestablish the republic the way it's supposed to be, are we honoring those treaties that were made by our founding fathers? And I would say, of course, absolutely.
We would have to. But are we men and women of honor? Do we keep our word?
Exactly.
Are we trustworthy? Do we have morals? Well, if we do, then yes, that treaty is an agreement, and if it's an agreement, you keep your word.
I love you. Keep working. Let's keep working. Let's do this thing.
Right on, brother.
And then
I love it. Peace and love.
But there's one point I want to make. You can be a U.S. citizen, and you can use that remedy in law to come back into the republic anytime you choose.
Yeah, thanks for pointing. Yeah,
you can get the other party to agree to it.
Right. Yeah, and thanks for pointing that out, Grant, because I did want to clarify that. Because again, typically when we're talking about re-inhabiting the republic, we're talking about the lawful people that can re-inhabit the seats of the government to run it. But really, like he's saying, anybody can say, hey, I want to be over here.
You can say at any time that I want to conduct my legal and political affairs in the republic by simply using your remedy at 28 U.S.C. 1746(1). But every day you give them an unrestricted signature, which creates an estoppel, which establishes legal relations in that plane of jurisdiction because you agreed to it.
Right. And that's why there's all the talk, which is true, about, getting rid of your driver's license, getting rid of your social security card, getting rid of your, getting your original birth certificate and saying, here it is, I own it. Doing the repudiation of your 14th Amendment citizenship. There's a lot of processes where a person is saying, no, I'm over here. However, there's another side to that story. that could be potentially, see, people have a lot of privileges and rights over there. Go ahead, Grant.
You know the law. You can very effectively use the 14th Amendment for your benefit in law, in court. If they deny you your due process and equal protection under the 14th Amendment, they lose jurisdiction. You can go to Title 42. A U.S. citizen has a lot of power if they will study it and use it.
Yeah.
I could take any U.S. citizen if I had somebody that knew the form and the procedure of law and file a declaratory judgment against. Let's say you could go against these Facebook or some company like that denies you your freedom of speech. And see that decision's already been made. It's Marsh versus Alabama. Go read it. You could take that Supreme Court case in there under declaratory judgment, where they stopped you from using your freedom of speech on their platform, because that platform is in a public forum, which was created by public money through DARPA.
Right. Yep. That's a big one.
A U.S. citizen could do that. I mean, once you figure it out, I don't care which side of the fence you're on, you have a lot of power. But people don't use it. And most attorneys are not going to do it. So it's up to us to educate ourselves, or if there's somebody that's an attorney that's went to law school that would agree to help us out. I could take a U.S. citizen and some attorney, and if you learn to file a declaratory judgment, go look up the Declaratory Judgment Act. There's a federal Declaratory Judgment Act, and there's a Declaratory Judgment Act in every state. If you know how to use a declaratory judgment against them, you can make them squeal.
Yeah, and on that note, while again our plea is we're putting a call out for true American posterity, sovereigns, to wake up, rise, join, so that we're a collective force.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them, all the better if they themselves are already skilled at law and they're good readers and they're good researchers, like my son, and they can get up to par on these laws.
Then we can start talking to groups like the Moors and stuff like that, and discussing these treaties and moving forward with other things.
No, wait a minute, brother. Wait a minute, brother. Listen, we're all here on this land, right? Mm-hmm. So the Moors have already been doing this kind of work. So we're not going to wait. I will be the middle person. If you're talking to a Moor and they don't understand what you're saying, you tell them, well, then talk to Shamal Garb El Yah. He comprehends, and he said we shouldn't be arguing with each other. We should be listening and uniting.
Yeah, and you might have misunderstood my son. He was just making the point that right now we're trying to get our ducks in a row to do what we're trying to do. Kind of first things first from our perspective. But we're with you.
And then we can get together and start. And then we can get together and start going for the jugular on other serious issues that need to be, addressed.
Oh, okay, right, I can say we're with you. We're with you. Where you want to go is where we need you to be in order for all of us to be free.
Right. Absolutely.
That's what I've been saying for a long time. I've been saying that for a long time.
So I'm with you. I'm with you. I love y'all, man. Keep up the good work.
Love you too, brother.
Thanks, God, for coming. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, so we'll let this one go. We've been going maybe too long already. I don't want to go too much longer. Grant will be back on at some point in the future when we have maybe a more targeted, specific topic to discuss, because we're going to start breaking it down now, putting the paperwork together, and it'll start coming together where we have kind of a point-by-point approach to what we're doing, and we'll keep everybody abreast. In the meantime, the website, TAPS, TAPS, stands for True American Posterity Sovereigns. TAPS hyphen, that's the middle line, not the lower, but the middle hyphen. PMA for Private Members Association or Private Ministry Association. TAPS-PMA.com. .org should be pointing to .com. If it's not now, it will be in the next few days. And again, we're looking for true American posterities that have that blood relationship, that vested privity of blood going back to the founding fathers, the creation and building of our nation, to be the lawful heirs and owners of this country, to come together. That's what we're doing. We're waking up, we're coming together and organizing so that we can do the right things on behalf of all Americans. So on that note, we'll let it go. And Grant, thanks again for coming on the call. You spent a lot of time with us. God bless you. Thank you. Last word for you, and then we'll hang it up.
Well, I was glad to talk to everyone tonight. Everyone has a good night.
All right, thank you.
Grant, thanks, Grant.
Thanks, Grant. Good night, brother.
Okay. Goodbye.
All right, y'all. Thanks everybody for joining. Again, I'm going to start having calls every Tuesday. I'm going back to every Tuesday, starting at 7. If I have a guest speaker, they'll come on at 7:30. And let me just show my little face here again. I'll come back on and make my final little announcement here. I'm on my phone and it's just terrible when I'm trying to manage here in my car. Can y'all see me? I can't see nothing here. I don't know where I'm at on the screen, but
We see.
if you could, yeah. I mean, I've literally been in my car, like holding my phone up here because that's where the speaker is, and holding both phones up and trying to get, the two phones to work together. So next week I'm going to have a cell booster and hopefully my new computer, which is right there. My new desktop working sharp, so everything will work more smoothly for me. Thanks everybody for being on. Spread the word and keep in touch through the website. We're going to get more and more information on there as time goes on. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. God bless everybody. Talk to you next week.
Till then.
Good night.
Adios.